Today, make sure everybody has a page of notes. We're going to look at multiplying positive and negative rational numbers. What's that? Yeah. Dylan has them all.
Oh, there's like 6 of them.
Okay. So, determine the sign of the product, if it's positive or negative. This, remember, we did positive and negative numbers, and we'll do the rules underneath here in a second. The product of two numbers with the same sign is positive. Okay. The product of two numbers with different signs is negative. Find the product. If working the fractions, put any negative signs in the numerators while finding the product. So let's just do this underneath here. If I have a positive times a positive, what's my answer going to be?
Positive.
It's going to be a positive. You write this down. If I have a negative times a negative, what's my answer going to be?
Positive.
Positive, right? Because a negative times a negative is a positive. If I have a positive times a negative, I'm going to have a negative. And then if I switch that, same thing. If I have a negative times a positive, what am I going to have? Negative. Make sure you have those rules down underneath, okay? And we're going to do rational numbers, in other words, fractions and mixed numbers, right? The rules don't change when you're talking fractions and mixed numbers. They don't. Somebody needs, find somebody, somebody's got one. Okay. The next page in your notes says this: find the value of 4/9 times, and your guys's, what I would do, because it didn't copy real well on yours, rewrite right down here, just rewrite it. This is 4/9, so you can read it, okay, times a negative 3/10, okay, because your copies aren't that good. So rewrite the original problem underneath. First off, the first thing I do before I start doing any math is the answer going to be a positive or a negative number?
It's going to be negative.
Okay, it's going to be a negative because we have a positive times a negative. So this really, this is what I would do. I would rewrite this as 4/9, and I would put the multiplication symbol in there, times a negative 3/10. How do you multiply fractions? Kellen, how do you multiply fractions?
That stays the same, and you pre-simplify.
Well, there's two ways. Let's just do the first way without doing any simplification or anything before we do it. When you multiply fractions, do you have to find a common denominator? No.
Just 3 times 4.
Okay. So you just multiply the numerators, and you got a 4 times a negative 3, and I know I'm going to have a negative answer because I have a positive and a negative, so I can put the negative out front of the fraction. 4 times 3 is 12 on the top, and 9 times 10 is 90. Can I reduce?
Yes.
How do I reduce?
You divide 90 by 12.
Divide 90 by 12. 90 divided by...
You cut it in half. 6 4/5.
Well, you need to find... What do you need to find?
6 4/5.
The least common multiple that goes into both of those, right? You find the least common multiple or the greatest common factor? In other words, what I'm asking you is, what number goes into 12 and 90 evenly? Well, let's start with 2, because they're both even. You could do that. So if I divide that by 2 and that by 2, what do I get? I get what? 6 over 45. Can I keep going? 3 goes into 6 how many times? 3 goes into 45 how many times? Okay, that's one way. Can I reduce that anymore?
No.
No, that's my answer, 2/15. Let me show. Thank you, negative. Okay, negative 2/15. Let me show you maybe a simpler way. I'm going to rewrite this problem, okay? And our problem was 4/9 times negative 3/10, right? Watch. You can actually do some cross canceling here. So what you do is you go like this. You look at the denominator on the left side, right here, the 9, and you compare it to the numerator on the other one, and you ask yourself, is there a number that goes into 3 and 9 evenly?
Yes.
Yeah, what is it? 3 goes into itself how many times? 3 goes into 9 how many times?
3.
Is there a number that goes into 4 and 10 evenly?
2.
2 goes into 4 how many times? 2 goes into 10 how many times?
5.
Now I multiply across. I got 2 times 1 is 2. 3 times 5 is?
15.
Saves you a lot of reducing steps, right? Saves you a lot of reducing steps. So basically you're doing the same thing here as you did here, but you just do it differently, right? This way is much quicker if you can recognize, right, and you know your times tables. This way, the second way is much quicker, but either way works. I don't care how you do it, okay? All right. Ooh, next page looks like this. Find the value of negative 3 1/5 times negative 2 2/3. Am I going to have a positive or negative number? Positive, because I got 2 negatives. So I'm going to rewrite it. If your copies didn't show up real good, I'm going to go, okay. I'm going to go a negative 3 1/5 times, I'm going to put the multiplication symbol in there. Negative, 2 2/3, not 1/3. 2 2/3. What do you suppose I do here? Yeah, always put them in improper because they're easier to multiply.
16.
Okay, so this is going to be 3 times 5 plus 1, so that's 16, right? So I'm going to have 16, negative 16 over 5 times, okay? Do the same thing here. I've got a 3 times a negative 2 plus 2 is 8. So I'm going to have a negative 8/3. Can I reduce like I did with cross canceling at all? Can't, right? Because there's no number that go into 5 and 8 evenly. There's no number that goes into 6 and or 16 and 3 evenly. So I know I'm going to have a positive answer. What's 16 times 8? Well, what's 10 times 8?
80.
What's 6 times, hang on,
128.
128. So listen, what's 8 times 10 is 80. 6 times 8 is 48. 80 and 48 is 128. So that's my numerator. 128, and it's going to be positive.
15.
5 times 3 is 15. How many times does 15 go into 128?
No, 16. No, it's 8 times. So 15 would go into.
You think 9? What's 9 times? Here's how you do it. Check yourself. What's 15 times 9? 45. 9 and 4 is 13.
So 8.
Too many, right? You can only go into it 128. So 9's not going to work. So
15.
let's try 8,
It's 120.
right? 40. 8 and 4 is 12. So it goes in 8 times.
So 8.
So over here, how many's left over? 8 times 15 is 120, and we have 8 left over. Denominator doesn't change. Can I reduce that anymore? Positive or negative? Positive. Done. Okay. So when you have mixed numbers, you just make them improper, multiply across like you normally would, and reduce your fraction. Pretty simple. Positive and negatives, that's the thing you need to worry about mostly, is what's your answer going to be. Okay. Next one. Work on this one on your own for a few minutes, and then we'll talk. Okay. The water level of Renee's swimming pool was dropping 3.4 centimeters every hour. What number represents the change in the water's depth after 0.25 hours? Which is how many minutes?
25.
What? 25 minutes in a quarter of an hour? 15, right? So work on that, see what you come up with. Work with somebody next to you if you need to, okay? I'm not even going to worry about it. I'm just going to go, okay. 3.4 times 0.25. Do I have to line up decimals when I multiply? Nope, only when you add and subtract. You put the decimal in at the end, remember? How many decimal places am I going to put in my answer? Jet, you need to get off your Chromebook, man. So then I just I'm going to ignore the decimals, excuse me, and I'm going to multiply. 5 times 4 is 20. 5 times 3 is 15 plus 2 is 17. I need a place value holder. 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 3 is 6. And I add them up. I get 0, 15, 8. And I go 1, 2, 3 places in. So I start here. Is that right? I heard a yeah and I heard a no.
No.
Why isn't it right? Well, if I get here and I think, what is that actually? That's
Decimal point should be between the 8 and 5.
not in my case. I got 3 places. So let's see if it's right. Let's see if it's right. What is that as a fraction?
17.8.
This right here is what? 85 what? 850 over what?
100.
How about 1,000? Because there's 1, 2, 3. So then I can go, right?
Think about it like so 4 and then the fourth, so that'd be 4.
What's 85 100ths reduced? But we got to keep it in fraction form. Let's try 5.
20 over 20.
So how many times is 5 going to 85?
17.
How many, 17 times 5 is 85? Sure? Be sure. Go do it right now.
Yeah, it is.
You're right, let me.
Yeah,
It is.
It's 17.8.
17. How many times is 5 going to 100? Okay, so that is the same as that. Okay? Let's see. Let's do it this way. If you haven't done it this way, you need to do it this way. What do I do here first? I know I'm going to have a negative answer. Ooh, you guys didn't let me put that negative. That's a negative. Okay. Ah, good question. How did I get 3 2/5 from 3.4? What fraction is 3.4?
So,
Isn't that 3.4? 3 4/10? And then 4/10 reduces to 2/5. Okay. Does that make sense? Okay. Do you understand that 3 4/10 is 3 4/10?
why would you just get 3.4 divided by,
Why are you dividing?
or no, why would you do,
I did over here 3.4 times 0.25 as a decimal. Now I'm going to switch them both to fractions and see if I have the same answer. That's all I did. So see this 1/4 right here? That's 0.25, which is the same as this. 3 4/10 is 3 2/5, which is right there. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I just converted them from decimals to fractions, which you guys have done. So 3 times 5 is 15, plus 2 is 17 over 5. Everybody understand where I get 17/5 from 3 2/5? Yes? Okay. Times 1/4. Can I do any cross reducing there? No. 17 times 1 is 5 times 4. 17 20ths, and it is negative. Okay? Doesn't matter how you do it. You can do it fraction form or you can do it decimal form, and it comes out the same. Okay. That's okay. So here's what I want you to do. Work on this one on your own. Let's see what we got. It's the next page in your notes. It says Roy ran the ball on each of the last 3 plays of Friday night's football game. On each play, he lost 5 1/4 yards. That sounds like our game on Friday, actually, doesn't it?
terrible.
Okay, or Saturday. So he's at a loss on the last 3 plays, 5 1/4 yards. Which value in the situation should be represented by a negative number and why? Which one of those should be negative? 5 1/4, because why? He lost yardage, so write that down for A. Right, so A, negative 5 1/4, because he lost yards. Okay, that's answer for A. So B, you need to write the multiplication problem. And C, find the value. Okay, you work on B and C for a moment and see if you can. Okay, this is what you should have, something that looks like this. So Kellen, were you correct?
Yes.
How did you do it mentally? Okay, fellas, back there, pay attention.
I did 3, I made 3 into a strong fraction, which is 3 over 1, and then multiplied 5 times.
Right here?
Yeah.
You did this? Okay.
And then multiplied 5 times 3 is 15, and then 1 times 4 is 4.
So you got 15 fourths?
15 and 3.
15.
Oh, I got 3 fourths.
Here's how I got the 3. If just doing it mentally, I went, okay, what's 5 times 3? What's 3/4 times 3? Or excuse me, 1/4 times 3. 1/4, 1/4, 1/4 is 3/4. Okay? So, you think about these things, okay? Before you write them down, make sure you, one, know if it's going to be a positive or negative. Because, Dylan, thank you. The positive and the negative is going to be the most important thing. That's what you're going to mess up on the most. So just know before you look at your problem what your answer is going to be. Is it going to be a positive or a negative? And then you can just put that in at the end. You don't have to worry about it a whole bunch. Okay? Make sure you have this in your notes.